You are holding a sharpened stick. That's it. No metal, no factory, no manual, just a shaved point of wood in your hand and a hungry animal somewhere out there that could kill you before you get close enough to use it. Now, imagine your entire survival, and the survival of everyone you love, depending on how well you've made that one object. For most of human history, this wasn't a hypothetical. This was Tuesday. You picture cavemen as simple, grunting, dragging clubs, barely scraping by, but the deeper archaeologists dig, the more that picture falls apart. The truth is that prehistoric humans were engineers, chemists, and tailors long before any of those words existed. They didn't survive the Ice Age, the megafauna, and each other by luck. They survived because they kept inventing their way out of extinction. So what were the actual inventions that kept your ancestors alive? And why does almost every one of them still exist in some quiet form in your life right now? Let's start with the oldest one, the spear. At a site called Schöningen in Germany, archaeologists uncovered a set of wooden spears roughly 300,000 years old, carved with a level of precision that surprised almost everyone who studied them. These weren't crude sticks. They were balanced like modern javelins, weighted toward the front tip so they would fly straight and true when thrown. Whoever made these understood aerodynamics without ever using the word. That's not an accident. That's generations of trial, failure, and refinement passed down until the design simply worked. Before any of that, though, someone had to figure out how to make a cutting edge in the first place, out of nothing but rock. Stone knapping, the process of striking one rock against another to flake off razor-sharp edges, sounds simple until you actually try it. Get the angle wrong by even a few degrees, and the stone shatters into useless fragments instead of a clean blade. At Blombos Cave in South Africa, archaeologists uncovered finely worked stone points dating back roughly 75,000 years, alongside engraved ochre fragments that suggest these same toolmakers were also thinking symbolically, marking meaning onto stone for reasons that had nothing to do with survival at all. The tools and the art came from the same hands. Precision wasn't separate from imagination. It grew out of it. A well-made stone blade could butcher an animal in minutes instead of hours, could scrape a hide clean enough to actually wear, could be resharpened again and again long after the first edge dulled. This single skill, striking rock with intention instead of randomly smashing it, is arguably the foundation every other invention on this list was built on top of. No blade, no hafted spear, no blade, no hide scraped soft enough to sew. Everything traces back to someone who first learned to read the grain of a stone the way you might read the grain of wood. Let's talk about one more invention, quieter than all the others, and easy to overlook entirely. Cordage, plain twisted fiber rope. Impressions of woven plant fiber found pressed into hardened clay at Ice Age sites across Europe show that humans were twisting plant material into cord tens of thousands of years ago, long before anyone assumed rope making was possible without metal tools. Cord meant you could lash a spear point onto a shaft, even without tar. Cord meant nets for fishing, snares for trapping small game without a single spear thrown, bundles that could be carried instead of dragged. A length of twisted fiber sounds too simple to matter, but without it, nothing else on this list holds together, literally. Neanderthals, long stereotyped as brutish and simple, were making a sophisticated adhesive out of birch bark tens of thousands of years before modern humans arrived in Europe. Researcher Paul Kozowick has studied this substance in detail, and the process is genuinely difficult. You have to heat birch bark in a low-oxygen environment without burning it to ash to extract a sticky black tar. Get the temperature wrong, and you get nothing. Get it right, and you have a substance strong enough to fix a stone blade permanently onto a wooden handle. That single innovation, hafting, turned a loose rock into a tool that didn't slip, a tool you could trust with your life. Now let's talk about fire, because nothing on this list works without it. At Wonderwork Cave in South Africa, researcher Francesco Berna and his team found burned bone fragments and ash residue dated to roughly 1 million years ago, some of the earliest solid evidence of controlled fire use deep inside a cave, far from any natural wildfire. This wasn't an accident that happened to occur near people. This was fire being carried, protected, and used deliberately, indoors, away from lightning strikes or brush fires. Fire meant warmth through brutal nights. Fire meant meat. You could actually digest efficiently, since cooking breaks down tough fibers and unlocks far more calories than raw meat ever could. Fire meant a small circle of safety in a world that offered you none for free. Let's reconstruct a scene. It's dusk. Someone crouches over a small pit, feeding dried grass into glowing embers carried carefully from the last camp, wrapped in bark to keep them alive during the journey. Nearby, another figure is heating tar over a low flame, dipping the tip of a stone blade into it before pressing it firmly onto a wooden shaft, then wrapping the joint tight with twisted cord to hold it as it cools. A third figure tests the balance of a finished spear, adjusting the weight near the tip the way their parent taught them years before. An older woman sits slightly apart, pulling a bone needle through layered hide, her stitches small and even, a skill that took her years to perfect, and that she is quietly passing to the child sitting beside her, watching every movement. None of this looks primitive. It looks like a workshop, humming with quiet, specialized labor, every person contributing one piece of the whole. Here's the part that surprises most people. Clothing might be the most underrated invention on this entire list. Archaeologist Olga Soffer's research on tiny-eyed needles found at Ice Age sites shows something remarkable. These weren't tools for draping a hide loosely over the shoulders. They were fine enough to stitch tailored, fitted, layered clothing, the kind that traps warm air against the skin instead of letting it leak out around loose edges. Without that leap from wearing fur to sewing fur, humans simply could not have pushed into the coldest regions of the planet and survived winters that would kill an unprepared person in hours. So here's the counterintuitive twist. You'd assume the most important survival inventions were about strength, weapons, brute force against a dangerous world. They weren't. The spear mattered. The fire mattered. But the thread might have mattered more than either of them, because it's the invention that let humans go anywhere at all, regardless of climate. A stronger spear helps you hunt one animal. A needle helps an entire population survive an entire season. And none of these inventions survived on their own. They survived because they were taught. A child watching a parent haft a blade with tar, watching another feed a fire just right, watching someone else stitch a seam tight enough to hold in warmth, that child became the next generation's toolmaker. The real invention wasn't the spear or the glue or the needle itself. It was the transmission of the knowledge behind them, passed mouth to mouth again, for hundreds of thousands of years, without ever being written down. Now, look at your own life. Your jacket is stitched exactly the way an Ice Age parka was stitched, just with a machine instead of a bone needle. Your kitchen knife is a blade fixed onto a handle, the same basic idea as a hafted spear point, just using rivets and resin instead of birch tar. Your stove is a fire pit with a lid, cooking your food for the exact same reason cooking mattered 300,000 years ago. More calories, less effort, safer meat. The shoelaces on your shoes, the rope in your garage, the string tying a package shut, all of it descends from someone twisting plant fiber by hand around a campfire, testing how tight it needed to be before it held. Even the paperclip holding your documents together is just a small, modern descendant of the same idea that let a stone blade stay fixed to a shaft. Two separate things, joined so well, they behave as one. You didn't invent a single one of the tools you use to survive winter, cook dinner, or cut vegetables tonight. You inherited them. refined 1,000 times over, from people who had far less and needed far more. You are holding a sharpened stick. Except now it's a kitchen knife, and the hand that shaped its handle understood exactly what a prehistoric toolmaker understood. Survival was never about brute strength. It was always about what you could build, refine, and pass on before the next winter arrived.